welcome to HitPoint. It's the show where we talk about movies, video games, TV shows, and anything else worth talking about. I'm your host and certified human adult man, Andrew Jeffries, and joined by co-host and technically professional podcaster, Jeremy Robbins. Jeremy, how are you doing?
I am doing great. I just changed the setting on my computer and it made a loud noise, so hopefully you can cut that out in the editing.
Very good. Good. I'll take a look at that. Make sure we got no loud noises for our listeners. Jeremy, before we get into our topics, and our topics are important, we're talking about our reactions a bit to the PlayStation 5 showcase and a little bit of recap, and then we're also talking about the big news from today. And that's Xbox buying Bethesda. But before we get into that, I do want to take a second to talk about some really important YouTube milestones for us. Obviously, it's not the biggest thing in the world, our YouTube channel, but we hit a really important milestone the other day. I was checking, and I saw our subscriber numbers hit 69, and I just really had one reaction to that, and that was nice. I have about 4 big milestones for us to hit, and that is 69, 420, 420, 69. Let's see, 69, 420, 420, 69. Nope, 3 milestones. I'm not doing 42,069 because that just doesn't work. But Jeremy, I'm very proud of us for hitting one of our milestones.
Well, we surpassed that milestone, actually.
I know, we're already up to 70. We're on our way, just, a couple hundred more to go. We'll be there, and when we hit that, I'll celebrate that milestone too.
Yeah.
But let's celebrate that milestone by talking about our actual topics. And did you like how I told you I have a really good opening for us? That was my really good opening.
I see. You cut out on my end at a part there, so I didn't quite actually hear everything you said.
All right. Well, when you re-listen to this episode, you'll be in for a treat. Anyways, let's move on to our actual topics, which is first off the PS5 showcase recap, review, reactions, all the R's that we can throw at it. You actually had a little live stream going when it was actually happening. That was pretty cool. We were wanting to try to do more stuff like that in the future, just try to actually like hold those reactions live. But we did want to talk a little bit more about it. But just to recap for everybody, PlayStation 5 launches November 12th. The regular disc-based version of the console is going to run $499.99. And then the version that is without a disc, and it's the only place the digital ones is only compatible with digital games, is launching at $399.99. Kind of in line with at least what I was thinking. I know you had talked a little bit about Sony possibly undercutting, but I'd say that's pretty in line with what most people were thinking. Any surprises on those sort of launch specific details?
No, I mean, it makes sense because I think I'll say this. I'm not surprised, but Sony has to do a lot of really good marketing on their digital edition to make people realize that it's more powerful than the Xbox Series S.
Yes.
Because right now, if everyone just looks at price, they're going to think Sony, well, both Microsoft and Sony have 2 systems, and Microsoft's is $100 cheaper.
Yeah.
If that's what they're going to see, unless Sony does a really good job of making it obvious, hey, this is just as powerful as the PS5 physical edition. It's just it's digital only. Therefore, it is more powerful than the Xbox Series S. And that's more so for the general public, because I know anybody who's been waiting for the next consoles is going to have done their research and know this. But for the general public, it's just, I think my only concern for Sony is they're going to lose sales on the digital edition for sure if that is not marketed well.
Yeah, you got to really, that's going to be a tough one to thread. Microsoft really came out, I think, really quite brilliantly with that, where they just made it basically a lesser unit. Because I think if you're only, I don't know, I don't know with what authority I'm saying this, but it makes sense to me that if you're offering a discless version, that it's also a less powerful version, doesn't need to necessarily do the 4K that the Series X can. So I think that was a pretty brilliant move on Microsoft's part to, rather than make the same console without a disk drive, which they already tried that with the Xbox One S. They had a diskless version. I don't know how well that one actually sold. Ooh, that's good grammar. I don't know how well that one sold. But I think it is a very smart move that they've done to make the less powerful console. So yeah, Sony's got to just really got to figure out a way to make that clear that it still has all the really strong internals just without the disk drive.
Yeah, and we really didn't have this in the agenda, but I think it really does need to be addressed because. Well, at the time of this recording, my Xbox Series X and Series S pre-orders have not started yet. When you're listening to this, they probably will have started. But as of right now, Sony is the only one that had their systems out for pre-orders, and the way they handled all of it was horrible.
Yeah.
They've come out and acknowledged that as well now. It's not completely their fault because retailers it made the pre-orders available ahead of time. From when they were supposed to, but that also is on Sony for not enforcing things and not setting up good structure, and also not having great communication. And they still, I would say, even though they've come out and said, "Hey, yeah, the pre-order stuff was horrible. We're going to have more," they've not had good communication since then because they basically said, stay tuned to the retailers to tell you what that information will be. Well, if you follow anything on Twitter, Best Buy responded to that tweet and said, "Thanks so much, Sony. Looking forward to more information." So it's like clearly
Wow.
They don't even know what's supposed to be happening. So they're waiting for information from Sony to be able to even translate that over to people to say, "Yeah, we're going to have more pre-orders and this is when," and all that stuff. But it was a horrible release for pre-orders. A lot of people that wanted to get one could not. I actually was lucky enough to be able to grab one, but I had to stay up till like 3:00 in the morning on Best Buy's website to actually get it to go through. And it was just a fiasco all around. And so we'll see how things go tomorrow with the Xbox. If it goes a lot smoother, I think it will speak to the fact that every new console generation, one or the other does something really stupid.
Yeah.
And this time it might be Sony's turn.
Yeah, it seems to... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, because last time with Microsoft, it was the announcement of that the Xbox One was only going to be digital, and people weren't ready at that point to do only digital games.
Mm-hmm.
And that has changed some, and the culture has changed a lot to where more people are willing to do that. That's why you have two kinds of consoles coming out now. But so it's just Microsoft made a lot of mistakes with their announcements of everything, and it really turned people off. But now that as of now, I'd say it's Sony's turn that they've screwed everything up.
Yeah. I'd say, though, I will say that if the worst that they screwed up is trying to actually sell their system, like the pre-orders on their system, and not exactly making that clear, they did still sell out of pre-orders pretty much everywhere, which is still... That's a pretty good sign for the system overall, even if there is a lot of consumer-based frustrations around that. Like, yeah, that sucks, and it doesn't look great on them, but it's like, well, we still got their money, sort of thing, But yes, the pre-order situation was just a mess, and Microsoft clearly seems to be learning the obvious lessons from that and announced well in advance when pre-orders were going to be available, and have kept a pretty clear timetable that basically every Microsoft person has been reiterating time and time again on Twitter. Just lots of retweets of the same information, just trying to make it clear for everyone when they can try to order an Xbox Series X or Series S. And the last detail we do want to mention about the PS5, one of the new big information things that they threw at us was the PS Plus collection, which is 18 PlayStation 4 games that will be available to PlayStation 5 owners as long as they have PlayStation Plus, which is a nice little benefit. And it seems mostly to be, it strikes me as mostly in place to sort of combat the readiness that Microsoft has with backwards compatibility and Game Pass. It's a pretty good selection of games. I mean, I'm looking at the list here. Batman Arkham Knight, Battlefield 1, Bloodborne, Fallout 4, God of War. Lots of good games on here. Last of Us Remastered, Last Guardian, lots of good games on there. So that's it. That's a solid collection to have, and plenty of people will already have PlayStation Plus going into, or at least I imagine they probably will have PlayStation Plus. So it's nice to have something to play because the launch games are not very numerous for either system. At least the new launch games, I would say. And we're really stretching the definition there, especially when you look at the Series X. The PlayStation 5 is okay in terms of launch titles, and that's what I kind of want to talk just briefly about. I think I read that the PlayStation 5 comes with a game called Astro Playroom, which I think is basically a tech demo for the DualSense 5 and whatever new capabilities come with that. I believe that's already preloaded on the console. Demon Souls, the remaster, is confirmed as a launch title. Destruction All Stars, which is a game I've not heard anything about. Godfall, famously going to be a launch title. I'm sure a very successful one. Spider-Man, Miles Morales, and Sackboy: A Big Adventure. Those are the console exclusive launch titles. There are a couple other bigger third-party titles that will also be launching with the next generation of consoles. But on the Series X, you have Gears 5 and Gears Tactics. Both of those are games that are out currently, but Gears 5 was specifically noted for being enhanced for Series X. Tetris Effect, Connected, and The Falconeer make up the list of the console exclusive for the Xbox Series X. Not exactly the most impressive lineup for a launch title of launch titles for the Series X, but you've got Game Pass, you've got backwards compatibility. I think Microsoft gamers will probably be okay for a bit, but they'll definitely be kind of hoping for some bigger games coming out pretty quickly, I would think. Any thoughts on the launch titles there, Jeremy?
Well, to me, for the Xbox Series X, it shows just how much of a detriment it was that Halo was postponed and delayed.
Yeah.
Because that was their big thing. And now when I compare the list from just the console exclusives, I'm like, oh, Sony's list looks way better. Like, just because you've got some actual games with some heft to them, like Demon Souls. I mean, because it's the prequel to the Dark Souls stuff and it's revamped. So anybody who's a fan of that series is going to be excited about that. But then for everyone who really liked the Spider-Man game, me being one of those people, to be able to have something that takes place in that world again, that's actually a year later, and get to use Miles Morales, who has a very different moveset and different abilities, that is huge, I think, for Sony owners, or PS5 owners. So that's, when you just compare, like you said, Gears 5 is already out. When you look at the two and compare, it's just that now the Xbox Series X doesn't have anything new. And like you're saying, that's not a huge detriment right now because they have so many games in the backwards compatibility and the Game Pass stuff. But when you come out with a brand new system, you always want to have a really big launch title to go along with it.
Right.
And Halo being delayed made it to where they don't. Which, that's when I compare the two, I'm like, well, that kind of stinks. For if I'm going to go get an Xbox, just because I don't have anything new to be excited about from that standpoint. But like you said, there's a lot of third-party games coming out too, because you've got Watch Dogs Legion, you got Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and the first week of December you have Immortals Phoenix Rising. Like, all those Ubisoft games are coming out all on the new consoles, so you're gonna have some other games that you would have played regardless of what system you had. So you're still gonna have some new games to play on your new system, but from console exclusive, it's just that Sony, they are benefiting from Microsoft's loss of having Halo at launch.
Yeah, they definitely are.
But that does segue pretty well into our next topic of what
It
was announced
does.
today, because
Mhm.
I think it really was announced today because of pre-orders going out tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah, Xbox has, or Microsoft, it's Xbox. Yeah, it's all the same. They have bought Bethesda, and if you are unaware, Bethesda are the makers of such beloved franchises as Fallout, Elder Scrolls, Doom, to name three big ones. They own a lot of IPs now, or will own a lot of IPs, assuming the sale does go through. There's some legal things they probably will have to get vetted by some trust busting task force that will not bust the trust here. But it sounds like, assuming things move along smoothly, the sale is going to be finalized sometime mid 2021. But they have announced the process today that they're starting that. And this is big, but maybe not quite as huge as I think a lot of people are making it out to be. Like, it's a big shift in the industry for sure, but I don't think it's gonna shake out quite the way that I think people are really expecting it to. Particularly in the case of talking about console exclusives. I think this is going to be a generation that this console generation is going to be really one where the console exclusives are going to really be de-emphasized in a lot of ways, and we've already kind of seen that with Microsoft already pledging a fair amount of support for bringing their exclusives to PC. So it's still kind of a console exclusive, but not really, because you can play it on a different platform if you really so choose. And even Sony's been going that direction with PlayStation as well. So I really don't think the acquisition of getting these mega franchises like the Elder Scrolls and Fallout is really going to change a whole lot in the short term. I think it's really going to beef up Xbox's offering on Game Pass, just having those pretty much available as not first party titles, but I guess it's kind of first. I don't really know. It's such a weird territory, Jeremy. I'm not sure what to do with it, to call it a first party title or not. But those titles will obviously make their way over to Game Pass at some point. I don't think we'll see kind of the full effects until a few years into this console cycle. I think it's going to be kind of a middle of the generation is where we're really going to see this come into play, because Microsoft's going to have a really strong foundation with all these different IPs. There's been a lot of speculation thrown around that that like the next Fallout or the next like Elder Scrolls 6 is in development right now. We know that is confirmed. There's some speculation that that might become now an Xbox console exclusive. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Elder Scrolls and Fallout in particular are too big of franchises right now to become just a console exclusive, because those games sold incredibly well. That really seems like it would be shooting themselves in the foot to only put it out on Xbox and PC. I imagine those will still come to PlayStation, though there might be. I think what we'll see is maybe some timed exclusivity for the console releases, but that they will eventually come to all the consoles. Maybe some of the smaller games that Bethesda would put out or would normally put out, we might see those just come exclusively, but the big franchises I think are still going to be safely available on all consoles. It'll just be a lot easier and probably a lot more like system specific enhancements on the Series X. I don't know. What do you think, Jeremy?
I read an article today that I think summed up my thoughts pretty well, to where it really comes down to Phil Spencer.
Yeah.
He has come out publicly and said he thinks that the culture needs to change to where this exclusivity whole thing that's been existing in the video game world needs to come to an end. That you should be able to play whatever you want to play on whatever console you want. And I know that's where a lot of the rumors of Xbox Live showing up on the Switch, that was one of the reasons why. It doesn't look like that's happening, but you can tell that's been Phil Spencer's mantra for a while now. And so it really, if you base it off of that, you would think what you're saying is exactly right. Like, these bigger games are not going to be exclusive to Xbox. One, just because of what he saying he stands for, but also from a money aspect. I mean, that's why Microsoft owns Minecraft, but they don't make that exclusive because they know they'd be missing out on a lot of money because they get a cut of all the sales on the other systems. It'd be the same thing with Elder Scrolls or Fallout or Starfield. When those come out, if they are on all the systems, Microsoft's going to get a cut of those sales. So they're eating into their own profits if they only exclude it to themselves. But it also goes against everything he's been saying. So that's where I would actually say I don't think there will be a timed exclusive aspect to this if they're on all the systems, because that's one of the things he's saying he doesn't like. Doesn't want there to be any kind of exclusivity. So if they're going to be on all the systems, they're going to be all on the systems at the same time, I think. The difference being that they're available on Game Pass. And I think that's the difference is with Microsoft is they're saying, hey, you have access to all these games from Bethesda from day one if you have Game Pass. And if anybody's smart enough to sit down and do calculations, which I put this in a group chat that you're in earlier today, if you have a PS5 and you're going to buy one of these games by Bethesda, it's going to cost you $70 most likely, because that seems to be the direction we're going for game prices. Or you could have an Xbox Series X and do Game Pass that as of right now is going to cost $10 a month. So that means you pay $120 a year and you have access to all these Bethesda games plus everything else in the Game Pass library. Yeah. So if you do simple math that way, it makes a lot more sense to go Game Pass. And I think that's what Microsoft will bank on is, hey, yeah, you can get it on any system. But if you have our system, you don't have to buy the game physically. It's available on Game Pass, and you're saving money in the long run.
Yeah. This I fully definitely agree. This is definitely a huge move to bolster Game Pass. Not that Game Pass necessarily needed bolstering. Game Pass is already a really fairly impressive service with everything that it provides at a pretty ridiculously low cost. It's going to really make that an attractive offering for a lot of people, particularly, I would say, the Xbox All Access crowd, those people who are going to be getting, the console and Game Pass Ultimate for, $35 a month. No down payments on a console, $35 a month for, 2 years. And they have Game Pass Ultimate and the console all paid for. That's going to be a huge steal for them. Those are going to be some happy campers here, and I think in the next 2 years. It's I was not expecting to wake up today and hear the news that Xbox had bought Bethesda. That was genuinely surprising. I would have thought that Bethesda, with the direction Bethesda was going for such a long time, that they were trying to be as independent as possible. I probably would have said that they were more likely to put out their own console than they were to be bought by someone else. So that was pretty surprising, I will say. Obviously, no idea how that's going to shake out in the long term. In the short term, I don't. One of our friends did pose a question to that gaming chat that you had mentioned, like, how does this affect Sony, was essentially what it came down to. And in the short term, I don't think it will affect Sony too much. But I think they're going to have to take a really long and hard look at PlayStation Now, which is their kind of competing service with Game Pass. They're going to have to take a long look at that program and really figure out why that's struggling to catch on as well as Game Pass has caught on. Because it's pretty competitively priced, and the features and the games, it's not bad. But for some reason, they just have failed to connect with consumers in the same way that Microsoft has with Game Pass. So, they're really going to have to figure out how to make that a really nice offering.
Well, I was going to say, you use the word competition. I don't know if I'd go that far. PlayStation Now really doesn't compete at all with Game Pass, and I mean, and that's one thing I was thinking of. The timing of this, of course, came because pre-orders are going live tomorrow. But there's another interesting timing aspect to this, is because after the PS5 was announced last week, the whatever his name is, Jim something, he came out in an interview and specifically said he did not see subscription services as a feasible way to make money and that they would lose money going that route, as the same as Microsoft has with Game Pass.
Hmm.
And for him to say that and then this come out today, it's almost like Microsoft responding saying, you might not think it's a way to make money, but we're going to double down on it and show you
Yeah.
just how well it actually works.
Yeah, it seems like they seem to be making it work. They've really invested a whole lot into Game Pass. I mean, this acquisition of Bethesda was $7.5 billion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's the largest acquisition in video game history, but I think it is the second largest. I think I saw that somewhere. I forgot to mention this way back when we were talking about it, but the list of exclusive titles, we did pull that from GameSpot just to give them the proper credit. Because we were too lazy to do our own research, so we just Googled exclusive, or I just Googled exclusive launch titles for each console, and both came from GameSpot. So thank you, GameSpot. I don't remember where I was going with that Bethesda talk, but $7.5 billion, a lot of money. But it's clear that Microsoft thinks that those subscription-based services are the future. So it's kind of Sony, I think, is haunted a little bit by the mistakes of the PlayStation 3, and are really trying to hold firm to what made the PlayStation 4 such a radically positive alternative to the Xbox One. Because the Xbox One at announcement was so consumer unfriendly that PlayStation's messaging to counter that was, this is just a classic gaming console. You put in the disc, you can share your games with friends. This is what you play games on. This is, you can watch Netflix or whatever, but this is not like a TV device. This is a video gaming console. That's what we designed this for. And I think they've really tried to stick with that with the PlayStation 5. Whereas Microsoft learned, I think, the right lessons from the Xbox One debacle, and that was to make something that people want to just play games on. And so they're focusing on, well, let's make it as easy as possible to play games and get as many games on Game Pass as we can. And I think that might hurt Sony in the long run if they don't kind of figure that out as well.
Well, I very much compare them, if you want to take it to the movie realm, that as of right now, Microsoft's kind of like Netflix. And when Netflix came out with streaming, and there was such a bad reaction to that, and everyone thought there's no way that's going to work. It's going to fall flat. It's not feasible to continue. All these different things, and that's what the industry said, and Netflix proved them wrong. And while I would say, as of right now, which I hope they don't go the direction that this other company did, but Sony's kind of like Blockbuster. Blockbuster doubled down on, no, we're a physical store. You come and rent your movies and take them home and all that stuff. And we know from history which one was right. And I kind of think we're at that crossroads with Sony and Microsoft. Not that Sony would go out of business. I would hope not. But I'm just wondering, I don't think, like you said, from effects on Sony in the short term, I don't think it's going to do anything. But in this next console generation, for however long it goes, I think when we hit a certain point, probably the midway point, you might see a shift. If Sony doesn't respond well to all this happening, and people catch on to the fact that, oh, I can do an Xbox All Access and pay $35 a month for 2 years and get a brand new system, and on top of that, get access to all these games and get them on launch day. Why wouldn't I do that? And I think that's where it could hurt Sony the more that hits the general population. And that's when Sony could become the niche gamer console that they won't make the money. And Sony has shown, as time has gone by, if something doesn't make enough money for them, they're more than happy to cut ties with it.
Yeah, that's accurate. Yeah, I think it is telling to see what each company has focused on for this console cycle, and Sony's focus on their innovations being in the 3D audio and what was the other thing?
Haptic.
Yeah, the haptic feedback on the controllers. I don't necessarily if I'd ascribe gimmicks to those just yet. But that's a really hard thing to sell. It's like, oh, next gen for haptic feedbacks, you say? Well, of course, that's where I saw this going, because trying to double down on what worked before is not, it's only going to work as long as the alternative sucks. Like the alternative of what Xbox One could have been really sucked. So I think that's a huge factor of why PlayStation 4 did so well. Yeah, and so for Microsoft to kind of figure out that this digital stuff and these digital services that they can offer to people, I think that's a big win for Microsoft there. And time will tell. Time will tell. I hope it doesn't turn into a Netflix blockbuster situation. I don't think it will, but I think Sony's really going to have to reassess these the digital offerings in particular. Like, I'm pretty shocked that the digital edition of the PlayStation 5 doesn't come with like even a month of PlayStation. Well, maybe it does. We don't know what, if it comes like with one of those little vouchers or something. But I'm surprised that they're not advertising like, hey, you get the digital edition, get a free 3-month pass for PlayStation Now. Like, you'd think they'd be shouting that from the rooftops, but it's pretty incredible that they aren't.
Well, I don't have the exact numbers, but I was trying to find it. I don't think I'm going to be able to. I have seen over the years during all this time with the current generation, there was something that came out about how many of each system are in households in America, and I think that's where you see the number where it's a much higher percentage that people have a PlayStation compared to an Xbox. It's more of just to support what you're trying to say of like, there was such a negative reaction to the Xbox One. A lot of people went with PlayStation, and that has stuck, especially due to a lot of the exclusives that PlayStation had. But I think that's probably the thing I'm talking about the most is when we get into the mid part of the next generation will you see a shift of more people switching to Xbox because of the strategies of the two companies. And I think right now that's what Sony's risking is that's not going to affect them right now, but in the long term, they may be risking having the most placement in a household. Yeah,
I would agree with you. Any last thoughts on Xbox, Microsoft buying Bethesda?
No, I think, the only thought I'd say, it's an exciting time to be a video gamer.
Yeah, no, it definitely is.
Every time there's a new console is exciting, but just there seems to be something about this launch that's different, where you really see both companies thriving and trying to improve and trying not to make boneheaded mistakes with their systems. They came in with good price points to where people aren't shouting to the rooftops saying this is way too expensive. Yeah. And they're having games that people are excited about that are coming out in the next year. So it's a really good time to be a video gamer again. And we haven't really talked about them because they didn't release a new console because they don't need to yet. But Nintendo's right up there with them right now of where they're releasing games, and there are rumors that they may come out with a pro version of the Switch next year that can do graphics the same as these new devices, maybe. That's very much in rumor territory right now, though.
Yeah.
But it's where you've got all three companies that are doing what they know how to do best and trying to hit the industry that way. And it'll be interesting to see who comes out on top at the end of this next generation.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's a fun time. It's a fun time to be around. I look forward to getting my next console, whatever that is. I'm admittedly not decided now between Series X and a PlayStation 5. But I will say Demon's Souls is hooking me as kind of that console exclusive. Sony's saying we're not going to be able to get that anywhere else, so I'm really liking how that looks. So I might get a PlayStation 5 just to play Demon's Souls, but I don't know how that'll shake out.
And that's if I didn't have a PC, I would be getting a Series X.
Yeah.
With especially the announcement today of Bethesda, I would be on board and saying I am grabbing one of those because I wouldn't have a PC. But since I have a PC and a lot of the Microsoft stuff comes out on both, I'm happy that I have a PC.
Yeah. It's a surprisingly good investment.
Mm-hmm.
Really simplifies the console buying process. Well, anyways, that's kind of our episode for today. Let's plug our social channels. If you've liked what you've heard today, be sure to follow us on facebook.com/thehitpointshow. Or if you really liked what you heard and want to kick a few bucks our way and support us that way, that would be awesome. Thank you so much. You can go to patreon.com/hitpoint. And I do want to take a quick second to give a shout out to our Patreon supporters, Doug Jeffries and E-Man, who are our current supporters on Patreon. Thank you so much for your contributions to the show. We can also be reached at, I believe it's twitter.com/hitpointshow.
Oh, goodness, every time.
And while Jeremy verifies that, we can also be reached at reddit.com/r/hitpointshow. I think that one's correct.
Yes, and what you said about Twitter was correct as well.
Yes.
Twitter.com/hitpointshow.
Yeah. And lastly, Instagram, if you want the quick up-to-date news, Instagram.com/Jeremy and Andrew's Very Good Show. I don't know the URL for this one.
Instagram, there is no URL because you can't get on Instagram on your computer other than just see what someone posts on Instagram. You can't interact with it as much. So just search for a Hit Point Show on Instagram. We have a broken heart logo like you see on the YouTube channel. That is us.
Yep. That I am a 26-year-old adult man, and I do not know how Instagram works, so there's that in my favor. Any last ending thoughts you want to leave the audience with? Any warm well wishes you want to send the listening audience's way?
I just want to say thanks so much for tuning in, and keep an eye out for more content coming.
For sure. Oh yeah, we're also on YouTube, which is probably where you're listening/watching this right now, but you might also be listening to it on your podcast software. Someday we'll get on there. Anyways, that's been this episode of Hit Point. I've been Andrew Jeffries.
And I've been Jeremy Robbins.
Thank you for listening. Keep an eye on your health bar. HitPoint is made possible by our generous patrons, E-Man and Doug Jeffries. Thank you so much for your support.